how artists can respond to, react to, and shape the culture or society around them. One of the big ideas or main themes that drive a lot of people to make artwork. I like to start this looking at this giant mural by Pablo Picasso. And it may not look it here, but this is a wall-sized mural, like 25 or so, maybe 35 feet long and at least 8 or 10 feet tall. Can't remember off the top of my head, but it is a big one. And he named it after a town in Spain called Guernica, which happened to, unfortunately, be on the wrong side of the Spanish Civil War. And he went after having heard about a bombing that happened there when the fascist side of that civil war used some new plane technology to kind of test out on what ended up being a civilian town. And Picasso, he lived nearby. He went and checked it out, and he was really impressed in a terrible way by the horrible chaos and destruction that he saw there. So he painted this enormous mural and shared it widely to help get the word out. So in this enormous depiction showing a lot of human suffering and pain, Picasso made an artwork that expressed that. And when he did, it helped to get a lot of people all over the world to know what happened and to be more aware of this event. And actually, even though the Republican side of that Civil War lost, the side that Picasso was supporting, the side that this civilian town was supposedly supporting, even though they lost, this helped to make their fight and their sacrifice feel more valuable to a lot of the survivors around. So this is one way that artists can make their work express something important and react to the society around them. As we go through this slideshow and look at some other examples of this, I'm hoping that you'll have a greater understanding of how artists interact with their societies, and will be able to recognize some historical examples of art being used to send social messages. Here we have a painting by George Grosz, painted shortly after World War I, showing a wounded veteran begging on the street and a rich guy in a fancy suit with a fancy cigar having some kind of a party. The painting's titled Inside Outside, and it really shows Grosz having sympathy for the wounded soldiers and having a little less sympathy for the people who, in his view, started or financed the war. Now, sticking with our theme of artwork that relates to or expresses events about war, here we have a scene from an artwork almost 1,000 years old from the Bayeux Tapestry. A tapestry which is 20 inches tall and over 230 feet long, which tells the story of King William the Conqueror's invasion of England. Now, this is a huge turning point in the history of England and the English people, and the Bayeux Tapestry, over the course of that 230 feet of length, shows a bunch of different scenes. Like here, some of the warriors traveling from the sea and about to debark their boats onto England's soil, where they would go and conquer that country. Now, not all of these artworks are about war, and not all of them are old or old-timey. Sometimes this can be, this sort of artwork can be a lot of different things, like this graffiti piece here, which uses an image of a person painted on a wall with a sign, pretty explicitly, pretty openly pointing out their message. Sometimes the artwork is sometimes this sort of artwork can be very historical and sort of vague, or about a long old-timey story or event that happened, and other times it takes a real direct stance on a social issue. Some other examples that are more or less clear and have different ways of responding to society. Here we have a piece called Fountain by artist Marcel Duchamp. Now, Duchamp was a part of an art movement called Dada, and their whole idea was they were in opposition or rejected the dominant culture of Europe. Many of these artists were veterans of World War I, and they were really horrified and deeply upset about what happened in that war, about the just wide-scale destruction and death that they experienced and fought about. The Dada artists, after that war, felt that every aspect of the society that had brought them to that terrible violence should be at least questioned or totally remade. And one way they did that was in art. Duchamp, for instance, would make what he called ready-mades, objects that he found in the world and presented as though they were fine art, sort of poking fun at the fancy schmancy culture of the high art establishment. This piece in particular was poignant because he actually found this at the side of the road near a hotel that was being renovated and called it a fountain, even though it was actually a old urinal. He was trying to suggest that the old classical art high style was pretty much the same, no better than an old garbage urinal. Really taking aim at the culture that, in their view, brought the world to that horrible destruction. Another artist who made artwork that shared their message was Keith Haring, an American artist from the 1970s and 80s. Now, Haring was a gay man in a time when that wasn't accepted in society and when that community was being badly affected by HIV and AIDS. Here in this painting, which again is a mural, very large size to help get the attention on the topic, he has people doing the classic see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil poses with the words ignorance equals fear and silence equals death, saying fight AIDS and act up. Here, Haring is talking about how important it is that even when things are uncomfortable, we be able to talk about them, and that if people continue not to know about things, to be ignorant of events, that spreads fear. And this is a time when a lot of gay people were experiencing a lot of bigotry or having their identities not valued by society. And this is especially powerful because the HIV/AIDS epidemic, which Keith Haring actually eventually died because of, was really most virulent in the gay community. So his idea here is saying, hey, we have to be able to talk about and identify what is happening here. People need to know about it, and we need to start to fight this illness. So Keith Haring was one of many activists who brought attention to that issue. And in the end, we've got a lot of much more effective treatments than we used to have, largely because of the intensity of the activism and the sort of public awareness campaigns like in this example. A third piece here, this sculpture of a rat stitching together a genome, is made by a Russian artist showing a lab rat and stitching together the genome with the idea that it's sort of honoring or paying homage to all of the rats, the mice, the other lab animals that are tested on, which have helped us to know so much more about the world. These animals often die in the service of advancing science and letting us know more about what works, how our bodies, how our genetics, and how our medicines can all work. So thanking them for their sacrifice, which has saved countless human lives. As we look ahead, now that we've got an idea of a few different strategies that this concept can help us to make interesting artwork, we're going to take a look more specifically at 4 paths that I encourage you to explore one of. You might pick an artwork that is directly about a social issue, like in this example, the artists from the Beehive Collective, a group of Maine artists, made a bunch of animals, all different woodland critters, and they're all coming together, even though in real life some of them would be eating or hunting one another and running and hiding from each other. Here, they're all working together. It says, we walk for the water. We can see that they're all coming together despite their differences in order to protect clean water, which every life form needs. The sort of implication or the message is that we as people should also come together to help for the water. And the artists get this across by using some symbolism, like the animals carrying flags and banners and using computers, and by using careful, effective design work so that we can really clearly see what they mean, and using strong art techniques. Mark Jenkins is an artist who makes sculptures out of trash and puts them in cities, makes them look like people doing people things, trying to draw attention to how we treat the most vulnerable in our population, often especially about homeless people. If you want to do a positive message in your artwork, you might consider designing a mural. You don't have to paint a whole full-size mural for this, but with these kind of artworks, we're really thinking about how we can use crisp colors and bold line work in order to make an easily understood image that celebrates a positive aspect of the community. You might think about Scarborough or Maine or another place that you have a connection to. This mural, for instance, showing Westbrook, shows different scenes from the community, from their history, from their current day, from different parts of the natural environment as well. Lots of different things, mostly representing elements of Westbrook as a town. Murals are art made large and usually in public spaces, like the Sistine Chapel, painted by Michelangelo in Rome, or in, I believe, San Francisco, in this painting called Garden Giant by artist Manuel Filani Ramirez. Here's another cool mural. You might instead choose to make a historical artwork identifying an important event or character from history and make an artwork that shows that event. These usually will have accurate body proportion and a realistic sense of space, use of costume or texture, pose, and showing the activity of a pivotal moment, like this painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware River, showing an important moment from American history. Or here, this stylized painting by Raphael, showing the School of Athens, one of the great schools of learning and science from ancient Greece. And a final path for this project is to reimagine a fairy tale or a folk tale. Think about a folk tale or a fairy tale, and without copying an existing version, come up with your own idea of how that artwork might look. Like in this scene from Little Red Riding Hood depicted here, we want to think about how we can use an image to tell about one specific moment from a story. Think about perhaps the climax or the moment of peak action, and how you can use, again, probably some specific details from the story, a three-dimensional feeling space, and other details to make your characters feel like they belong together and like they're original. Here are some other examples of illustration, these from a couple of Indian folk tales, Rama and the Demon King over here. So there are lots of ways that we can make artwork that tells something about a society, whether it's folk tales, having a moral or a message that people want to be reminded of and that are important to our culture, or something a little bit more direct. Either way, if you choose this path, you're going to take step one, doing a quick introductory exercise, should take about one class. You're going to do some research, looking at some of the options and really thinking and deciding what you want to do. Step three will be planning out, making 3 sketches of 3 different possible ideas. Usually, step 2 and 3 will take 1 class period together. Step 4, you might need to try some new material technique because we want to try and use a new material that we haven't used yet before. So you might have to take some time practicing that. We'll want to do step 5, sharing our favorite sketch with a partner or two and getting some feedback. And then we'll spend several classes, like 2 or more weeks, making the artwork based on our plans. Make sure between step 5 and 6 that you check in with me. And for step 7 and 8, that's as always, assessing our work, submitting a beautiful picture, and reflecting on it. I think we've got a lot of fun options here. I hope you have fun, and let me know if you have any questions. Happy